So this is a new piece of equipment in the shop. It's a Rockwell 28-3x5 or 3x5 variable speed bandsaw. Figured I'd give a quick walk around how I have it set up in case it's useful information for anybody or any questions about other people who own it or from other people who own it because I couldn't find a whole lot of good information on this from this era. There's newer manuals, there's variations on this, but figured I'd put something up. There's the name badge plate. If I can get it to read. And so this one does have a 2 horsepower 3-phase motor. Of course, being my home shop, I don't have 3-phase power, so I do have a VFD in here. And I'll talk about how that's controlled in a moment. One thing I ran into is the gearbox has an oil fill plug here on top, but it does not have the check and drain plugs and fitting on the lower corner here where the manuals I can find indicate it should be. Appears to have the original Rockwell branded motor still. The variable speed pulley set up here, controlled via cable with that foot pedal on the side. And then as far as starting and stopping this, I thought it'd be nice to put the VFD inside the cabinet and not have to use the controls on the front of it. So for now, I'm leaving it at full speed. And the way so if I start from the beginning, power supplied from overhead on a 20 amp 240 circuit there into this disconnect and fuse box, which is the main power switch for the whole thing. So now the VFD won't have power. The whole thing is off, cold, no power coming past this, kind of like it would be in the original configuration. So with power onto there's now power into this motor starter. But because we don't need the motor starter as a motor starter anymore, I wanted it to be effectively use it as a latching relay for the low voltage inputs to the VFD. Like many VFDs, this takes low voltage inputs for forward, stop, and reverse. In this case, I just need forward and stop, which is open and closing these two contacts. So that goes through that bushing there into the back of the motor starter. And I had rewired the motor starter so that it uses the 208 volt coil to actuate the contactor still. But all of the higher voltage, the 208, is disconnected from the terminals of the contactor. So the momentary start and stop buttons are still controlling 208 volt make and break for the contactor. But only one of the 3 actual contacts on the contactor is actually being used, and that's just opening and closing the low voltage. I think it's 24 volts for inside for the contactor. So this way, when we start it, all this is doing is gonna use the higher voltage to latch the contactor, and then close those two 18 gauge wires going to the VFD. And then the stop button breaks the 208 to the contactor coil and opens those 2 wires, which is the stop signal for the VFD. I don't think I'm going to be using it for speed control at all. It's really just for power conversion here and soft starting. The variable speed in this machine seems to be in decent working order, so that's all I need the VFD to do. Even the speed gauge on here works after unkinking the cable to it. So at some point in the future, I could always run 3 wires up here for a potentiometer for speed control. Basically the same thing I did on this lathe over here. I have speed control here, and that's because the original variable speed transmission in this lathe was removed due to failure back before I bought it. So in this case, the VFD is back on the wall. I do something similar here with the electronics cabinet in the back of this lathe, which has contactors for starting the motor in forward and reverse. I'm using those to control low voltage inputs to the VFD. So these original push buttons actually still work, and they just open and close the different contacts on the low voltage side of the VFD. So similar setup between the two machines. The difference in this one is that it was a motor starter that I needed to do a little more rewiring and bypass the heaters and make a little more change to how the coil for the contactor, it was self-latching with the contactor to ensure that the high voltage does not get sent to the VFD. Whereas here, this has the control side was less entangled with the power to the motor from the start because of just how the enclosure is set up with transformer for the control voltage and multiple contactors and whatnot. So yeah, that's the setup of this machine that's pretty new to the shop. Haven't really used it for much yet. There's a few things to do. The hose and fittings for the air blower were broken off, so I'll make or find replacements for that. I'd like to add some task lighting to it. The saw this is replacing had a light on it, which was useful. And I have the cover off for this right now, but I would like to find the optional blade welder for this. For now, I'll just put the cover back up. But it would be great to actually find a blade welder to put in here, even though I don't critically need that. I do have a lot of blade stock, and I don't have another great way to weld up blades correctly. I don't have a TIG welder currently. And I think that's it. So, I don't know, there's just a video going on for anybody it's useful to.